So welcome everyone. I'm Ivy Rivera. I'm a psychic medium, a Taino Arawak, and I own a school called the Ivy League Psychic Academy, where I train people internationally, online, and now back to in-person in everything, ranging from psychic mediumship development to numerology, tarot, astrology, Reiki, paranormal, empathic work, meditation, you name it, we do it. We help children as well as adults, so we hope to see you for the full classes. You can go to ivyleaguepsychicacademy.com for more information. But what you've got here tonight is one of my free mini classes. I've been putting out 1 to 2 free mini classes since the pandemic hits. This is called the Quarantine Series. If you want to check all of them out, and there are many at this point, you can go to YouTube at Ask Ivy up in the playlist and see them all. Today we are talking about trauma and intuition. How are they connected? So trauma and intuition are intrinsically connected. Now that's psychic, mediumistic, and empathic ability. So you could say that every time you go through something traumatic, your intuition naturally increases in order to keep you safe. You become more in tuned to hearing from spirits, your ancestors, your guides, your angels on the other side, who are trying to help you avoid danger and disaster to keep you safe. You become more in tuned psychically with your clairvoyant ability. Your clairvoyance allows you to predict accurately the past, the present, and the future. When you can use your psychic ability to dodge bullets, you are going to have a much higher survival rate than the average person who has decided it's not real. I'm not going to listen to my gut instinct. That is foolishness. And we really do have to accept at some point that everyone who is alive on planet Earth is using their psychic ability every day. And everyone who is here is automatically a medium, because spirit does not require your belief to communicate with you. They will just do so when they feel like it. Now, we also see this with empathic ability. So empathic ability, those people that are incredibly in tune to other people's emotions, to other people's pain. They are also telepathic. This could very much help if you need to be in the mind of an abuser, for example, to better protect yourself. So we see an increase in all three of these areas every single time there is a trauma in your life. So we could say the more trauma, the more intuitive. Raise of hands, or please, post in the comments section if you feel that this resonates with you, especially if there was an incident in your childhood where maybe you grew up in an abusive or neglectful family. Okay. Now, those people tend to have it the most. That does not mean that in adulthood, when you face other types of traumas, it can't happen then as well. It absolutely will. Okay, so we don't really discuss the intuitive intelligence increase due to trauma because it's taboo to talk about abuse and neglect. People don't want to talk about being vulnerable. They don't want to talk about their mental health. And we are in a time right now in our society, especially in America, where we're seeing the repercussions of that. We're seeing people that are mentally ill really just off the hook. And we are reaching a point in our society where we're talking about this more and more. And especially after the pandemic, and I just did a free mini class last week, I believe it was. Didn't we do empaths in the pandemic? Or the pandemic and the awakening? It was called the pandemic and the awakening. Paul, if you could put that in the comments section, you guys go back and watch that, and how I talked about we all have been through a 2-year-long trauma. So everyone on the planet, due to the pandemic, has now been activated to a heightened level of intuition. Okay, so the awakening is happening, and we're talking more about psychic, mediumistic, and empathic ability in that. Okay, so we also need to acknowledge whether or not we are empaths, right? The new hot title, the new thing everybody wants to be. I'm an empath. I'm an empath. I'm an empath. How many empaths are really picking up on other people's emotions, other people's thoughts, are so in tuned to situations around them because they went through trauma and they're unhealed? They haven't done the shadow work. They haven't gone to therapy. I would say that that's the vast majority of empaths out there. Now, it doesn't make it any less real. It doesn't make you any less of an empath. You still have the abilities, but where did it come from? And so that's sort of a huge debate that I feel brewing, where people are saying, are you an empath or are you just traumatized? What's the difference? There is no difference. But empaths, regardless of where it came from, really need to be very mindful that they are using the ability, the skills wisely and from the light, because an abusive empath who is incredibly gifted at manipulating others, who was raised by a narcissist or a sociopath or in an abusive, or neglectful household, will be the worst kind of abuser that there is. So we do have a dark side to empaths. And I believe that dark trail really goes back to unhealed empaths and their trauma, childhood trauma specifically. So I would say for all the empaths who are tuning in, ask yourself that. Did you just find you increased with your intuitive intelligence and one day you were like, wow, I'm really empathic. I can connect with other people without having to say a word. You really are very in tune to the environment and the universe and morality and an ethical code of conduct. Are you a healer? Empaths are energy manipulators. Are you skilled at things like medical intuitive work, energy work? Or is this coming from a darker place and it started after the trauma that you went through? Now, I also want to say this. Empathic ability is inherited. So a lot of people will find that they had relatives who were also empaths, but it splits. And so if you look back at your family line, you may find that there were people in your family who were incredibly healing and they were open. They were able to make every child or everyone's needs part of their own concern, and maybe even taking people in like they were family. They'd give you the shirt off their back. A lot of them were in the medical field. They were teachers. They were the helpers. Then we have the other side of empathic ability through the bloodline, where we can see mental illness. We can see a lot of rage, drug and alcohol abuse, a lot of problems with stability, and a lot of meltdowns. Okay, so you can look back at your family and you could say, I definitely have empathic ability in my bloodline. Some handled it very well and they were these great healers, and other people in the family did not handle it very well and it did become a disability. And even that can lead to a lot of generational trauma. Okay, so it gets really hard to tell whether empaths are empathic because of childhood trauma, or if they are empathic because it was handed down to them. It was hereditary. Or, some of us have spontaneous empathy, something like having the cord around your neck, or a near-death experience, going through some kind of horrible car accident or a disease even. All of these things can trigger your empathic ability. But that in itself is a disturbance. It's an abuse to your system nonetheless. So we need to gauge a little bit more where our empathic ability is coming from. And for those of us who did get it from trauma, especially abuse or neglect, we need to be careful that we are not turning into narcissistic empaths who are manipulating and abusing other people, because we are the most skilled in the world to do so. And I also want to break down here today the 3 most common areas where I see people increasing with their psychic, mediumistic, and empathic abilities. due to trauma and what that trauma looks like. Okay. Also, what are you supposed to be using it for? What does that mean? I'm now more psychic. Okay, well, it means you are capable of doing this and this and this. And here's how you can use it for the greater good. So let's look at a couple key areas. Now, there are many more, but for the majority of my students, my clients, even myself, this is what you typically see. So number one, triangulation in the family unit. Triangulation. This is a form of manipulation through threats of exclusion or outward manipulation. The goal is to divide and conquer. It involves the use of indirect communication, often behind someone's back. So if you grew up in a family where there was a scapegoat, maybe you were the scapegoat. If there was a black sheep, it's usually that child that takes the beating from triangulation. There is the favorite. There is the child who gets sort of adopted to carry on the dirty work of the abusive parent or parents. And then you have the scapegoat. And then you have, in narcissistic lingo, they call them the flying monkeys. You have all the supporters, the aunts, the uncles, the other siblings, everyone else who sort of supports the abuse by doing nothing about it. And triangulation is particularly brutal because it goes on in backstabbing. It goes on in communication in front of you or behind your back. And it is sort of a plotting against you as the scapegoat, you as the black sheep, you as the one who's going to take the beating. It can create a lot of paranoia for you long term in life, and it really makes you not trust anybody. It increases your telepathy. It increases your psychic ability. It increases your messenger of death syndrome. Okay, so we're talking about clairvoyance, which is the ability to predict the past, the present, the future, because you had to. You had to protect yourself from it or whatever they were plotting. So you got very skilled at that. Telepathy, the ability to hear other people's thoughts. Okay, you would have to use that all the time to protect yourself and plan ahead. Messenger of death syndrome is the ability to predict a tragedy or a disease or someone who's going to die. And it's just due to the toxicity of something like triangulation that we automatically get in touch with messenger of death syndrome. We would also see electric person syndrome, which is something we really only discuss with empathic ability at the 3rd and the 4th levels. And with electric person syndrome, we see that when you're really upset or you're really excited, you can shut down electronics, burn out light bulbs, drain batteries, completely drain a phone or recharge a phone. Okay, a lot of people drive under streetlights and they go off and then they keep going and the light goes back on. All kinds of things with electronics. What should you be using this for? Well, I think that the ability to predict, especially tragedy, is very useful. And knowing through discernment and proper training when you should step in and give someone a warning about an accident that's about to occur, about their health, anything. If you can do that, you should do that. This is something you can turn into a great blessing. With electric person syndrome, it's a sign that you're a level 3-4 empath. What are empaths? They are the healing entities of the world. You are able to connect to angels. You're able to connect to animals. You're able to use energy to remove toxicity, even disease. You should be using it for healing purposes. All right, let's talk about event trauma. Okay, so category number 2, event trauma. This is a near-death experience, a traumatic divorce, loss of a loved one, a flood, a tornado, fires, car accident, a health crisis. And I would add that if you were a child who had to caretake over a sick family member, like a parent, for example, and even if this happens to you later in life, your parents are getting older and you have to care for them, this can really be an event trauma that triggers your intuition in a huge way. All right, when we talk about loss of a loved one, those that would see it the most would have lost a spouse or a child. So event trauma is going to increase your mediumistic, psychic, and empathic ability. You're going to channel angels more often. Now, angels are the healing entities of the entire universe. So they come in when they are needed, when you need protection or when you are down and out and you need healing to your mental and emotional well-being. So they are pretty off limits beyond that. They're very elusive. However, people who are highly empathic or have gone through this type of trauma sort of have a direct link to them all the time. And if you're able to connect with angels this easily, you could also be giving out a ton of healing to other people and situations around you. Again, with this one, we see an increase in messenger of death syndrome. Again, that is the prediction of when people will pass away, when a tragic accident or disease will occur. We see medical intuitive increase with this one. So event trauma makes you incredibly in tuned to other people's energy, the body itself, and anything that is in need of healing in that energy field. Sickness, disease, broken bones, mental illness. Okay, we see clairvoyance increase, a lot of dream prophecy. Who here dreams every night in these vivid, accurate visions about the future? Okay, and then you can journal them and you'll see they happen. This is definitely part of that. And animal communication. This would make you a great animal healer. So category number 3 is being raised, and this is probably the most common one that I see. This is being raised by a sociopath, a narcissist, a drug addict, or an alcoholic parent. This can also happen if you married a partner that has those problems, or you got into a long-term relationship with a partner like that. You had children with a partner like that. Okay, you became embedded. This is going to increase your psychic, mediumistic, and empathic ability, in particular, your clairvoyance, okay, for accurate predictions. Also, mediumship. This is an area where people who have dealt with this for any extended period of time will become incredibly mediumistic. Left ear ringing, tinnitus in the left ear, a lot of anxiety attacks. Spirit is always coming in to communicate. Random bouts of profusive sweating. This will also sometimes affect your vision, translucent lines across your vision, numbness in the face, the mouth, tingling in the hands or the mouth. Often when a spirit comes in to give you a warning, to give you a message, to keep you safe, you have pretty extreme physical side effects, okay? But that's all part of mediumship. We would also see OCD-like tendencies, which just really means that you are attuned to the slightest shift in energy from atmospheres, with objects, from other people around you. It can make you OCD, where you have to keep things in order and you're kind of nervous all the time. You're waiting for the other shoe to fall. Things have to be very particular for you to be at ease. But this is from repeatedly being attacked and manipulated by that abuser. We see a lot of empathic ability also. I would say the most empathic ability from this group, because they had to abandon as, let's say, a child, for example, or if you were married to a narcissist, you have to abandon who you are. You have to abandon how you feel. You have to abandon what you want, what you need. And you become so immersed in the abuser that you are incredibly, incredibly in tune, as though you're walking on eggshells. You know, you're trying to dodge a blow up. You are knowing what they need, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, if they're going to go off the edge and start a fight or become abusive. You know that before it even starts. And so your empathic ability is helping you to stay safe. I would also say that from that detachment, and I've experienced this personally as a kid who was abused and neglected, I learned to just tune it out. My mother kicked me out at 9 years old. She told me she didn't want me in the house anymore. I learned how to tolerate being in that kind of hostile environment by just completely exiting the left logical side of my brain and entering into the right intuitive side of my brain. So through detachment, a system of sort of becoming numb, you become far more psychic, mediumistic, and I would say even empathic at times. Okay, so detachment from the self or reality, you create your own reality when you live in a predicament like that, definitely will help you to be more accurate in predictions about anything in the future, because you're more comfortable in that. It's almost like another dimension, okay, more so than you even are on Earth. Okay, there are a bunch of other ones, but that's it for today. Since this is just a mini class, I do want to get to your questions. But before we do that, you know, what else can you really do with this? Okay, this is a lot of interesting information. So what? What do I do with it? Well, use it. Okay, you're not here on Earth just to be a punching bag. You're not here to be a victim to the side effects of these horrible circumstances that you survived. So let's use it. Learn the lost language. Join me for psychic mediumship class. Learn about psychic ability and how it works. Empathic ability and how it talks to you. Mediumship and what spirits talk in what ways. What is this all about? Get educated in the language of your skills and then use it for the greater good. Okay, once you're skilled and your discernment is in check and you know how to start controlling all of this information, you can give it out to other people. Okay, you can help the world around you. You can heal the world around you, and you can break these generational curses. We also know that taking things like the class where you learn the lost language, the psychic mediumship course, helps people to get stabilized. So if you have a lot of ups and downs, you feel like your life entirely is a roller coaster, like you are on a roller coaster, this will help you to finally be able to control the energy and what you do with it. Okay, so Shelby says, my mom flatlined when I was born and they brought her back to life. I'm always curious if that affected her abilities or if it could have affected me. Very random. Well, yeah, so of course it affected her abilities. There's no way it didn't. Whether or not she acknowledges that, you know, is debatable. But a lot of people acknowledge that they get things spontaneously or they are intuitive, but they don't really put a lot of stock into it and develop it. That's most common to see. Would it have affected you? Absolutely, because at that point you're still so connected to your mother. And that's also a great question, because what I didn't mention here was another category, and that is you being intuitively activated based on the trauma of someone in your inner circle. So whether that's a parent or you have to watch a sibling be abused, you have to, heaven forbid, ever watch your children be abused. These are all activators as well. So yes, you and her. Okay. From Nicole, what about when people come into your life? can your ability become stronger? And if so, why? Okay. And also, you guys, donations are appreciated. And please, if you didn't already do so, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe or follow. Okay, so that's a great question. Nicole wants to know, what about when people come into your life, you know, can your ability become stronger? It can if they're a soulmate, meaning you have a work contract with this person that you signed on to before you came to Earth. It can if they're a member of your soul tribe, meaning, again, you have a work contract with this person to a lesser degree, but still. It can if there's a karmic contract. So there's karmic debt owed. There are some very intense lessons that are going to be learned from this relationship, and all of these have chords. So yes, when you meet someone that you have a significant contract with, it can absolutely. I would also say that if you're not aware of your intuition, and to what degree you tune in to other people and situations around you, you could find that it seems activated when certain people come closer to you. And that could be a warning that that's somebody you need to watch out for. That is your gut instincts protecting you, and you didn't even realize, you know, that it was working all along. The other thing that can happen with that is that if you are empathic and another individual is empathic and you come together, it's really kind of electric. And that will increase not just your clairvoyance, mediumship, and empathy. It will activate everything in the environment. So other people will feel it. There will be more spirit activity. You'll start to see things. You may even see like full apparitions. All kinds of other stuff will happen. When empaths get together, we are unstoppable. Kara says, my parents would separately say negative things about each other to me, and I felt like I took on all of that negative energy. Would that affect my intuition? Well, certainly. If you found that it was abusive, if you felt that they were creating sort of a hostile environment for you to live in, it was extremely stressful, that could have certainly increased some of it. You may have also had to learn how to avoid it, which requires psychic ability. You have to predict, you know, when it's going to happen. And with empathic ability, to avoid another situation of triangulation like that, or backstabbing like that, you would have had to also be very in tune to your parents' emotions and even telepathically with their thoughts to predict when they were going to do it, so you could sort of dodge and get out of the way before it happened. Thanks for the donations and all the support, okay, that you guys are giving me here and giving each other. Have a beautiful week. Thank you, Spirit.